Video games are violent, and they turn nice boys into racist incels who do heinous crimes.
We must stop the glorification of violence in our society. This includes the gruesome and grisly video games that are now commonplace.
Later, in the void.
One rough hour, and I mean real rough, the word will get out and it will end immediately.
Now, backlash against the evils of gaming has been around since the 80s.
Parents who can't believe the game makers are fantasizing about decapitation and murder.
I don't think they'll have this at home, no.
You don't think so?
A little bit too violent.
You look a little startled.
Yeah, it's a little too violent, I think.
That's pretty bad. That's just plain gross.
Early hysteria culminated in a calm and measured 1993 Senate hearing.
And then it goes on at the bottom to advertise that it includes deadly new weapons, 6 levels of monster bashing, mayhem, and killer special moves.
People continue to blame everything from the loneliness epidemic to mass shootings on violent video games and those who play them. But the most popular game of 2023 was a fantasy adventure in which you, among other things, befriend a sexy druid elf who turns into an even sexier bear. That's right, in this game, you can bang a bear.
Sometimes, if blood runs hot enough, it's difficult to tame the beast.
Or reunite families, or earn rewards for petting 2 cute animals. The success of Baldur's Gate 3 shows that gamers are looking for a lot more than violence when they turn on their consoles. Rather than machines for the making of incels, it seems that video games can make us better and more moral people, which is great for us and for the gaming industry and its $455 billion annual profits. I don't see any conflict between ethics and money. Do you? Now in Baldur's Gate 3, you wake up on a ship with a worm in your head, and then you go on a grand adventure to get that thing out. An alternative title is You're Being RFK Jr. Now along the way, you deal with feisty goblins, you take on side quests that lead to nowhere, and then you accidentally witness interspecies sexual experimentation.
They sound disgusting.
This might sound silly and even unproductive, but for most scholars of ludology, game studies, lack of productivity is the very point of gaming, or honestly any form of play for that matter. Now in his influential text, Homo Ludens, Johann Huizinga writes, play is largely devoid of purpose, that is to say, the action begins and ends in itself, and the outcome does not contribute to the necessary life processes of the group. In other words, for the vast majority of us, gaming doesn't materially help keep us or our families alive. Kerr elaborates that play is not associated with material interest or profit, rendering it essentially a waste of time, an escape from everyday life spent hustling for our next paycheck. And we see this in aspects of Baldur's Gate that aren't inherently productive, like a side quest where you rescue a girl from an evil hag and then you help her resurrect her husband, who's now this.
What have you done to him?
Or in character creation, which doesn't directly determine your success in the game. Instead, this feature gives you the chance to try on different identities ranging across species, gender, race, and physicality, or differentiate your game experience via class or abilities. The fun of unproductive gaming hasn't stopped some from observing that there are ways to harness gaming for more conventionally productive means. Scholars Starbuck and Webster argue that play at work may be time wasted, but that it can contribute to high-quality results, and it may induce workers to work longer by engaging their problem-solving abilities. You know that there's people who are academics and their whole job is just to research how to make you more productive, and they got PhDs, they work really hard, they're like scientists, and literally what they've dedicated their life to is figuring out how to make you more productive at your meaningless job. That's cool. People talk about how academia is bad because of like woke Marxists who want to turn your little baby trans. No, this is the real issue. The academics who do nothing more than serve capital by coming up with research to make you a more productive little drone. I love it. But this emphasis on increased productivity in monetary terms ignores the real value of play as it applies to video games, which is helping us become more ethical people. We see this in the work of German philosopher and poet Friedrich Schiller. Now, he saw play as the ultimate source of humanity's liberation. You know, when you hang out with your party members, you're engaging what Schiller saw as the 2 main human drives. Now, there's the sensuous drive, which is about aesthetics, and then the form drive, which is about reasoning and cognition. And when you try a new build, these 2 drives are merging into the play drive, or Spieltrieb, the unification of our desires for aesthetics and form. He writes, play alone, which of all man's states and conditions is the one which makes him whole and unfolds both sides of his nature at once. The Spieltrieb is the drive to explore and interact with your surroundings. It attempts to make sense of the world and your role in it. It's the drive to understand what it means to be a person, or or a dragonborn. And this is where we distinguish between your character, say a ranger who can only talk to animals at your command, and you, the player, who can combine your aesthetic desires to see a guy convince an ox to give him a ring, and your logical desires to just throw some guy off a cliff instead of wasting your real life time having a complicated fight with him. None of that made any sense to me, but I bet it rips. If you're a gamer that wants to host this channel, we're doing auditions. Send us your tape. But it's more than learning your character's relationship to gravity or ability to cast hellish rebuke. In Baldur's Gate, much of the gameplay is focused on moral exploration. Now consider the Dark Urge playthrough, in which you have access to Dark Urge conversation options and action. Now rather than dictating your character as exclusively evil, you have narrative flexibility. You can simply lean in and be the bad guy, or try to resist your worst impulses like a complex anti-hero. I don't need the game to live like that. I feel like that's how I live every day. I feel like I wake up and the Dark Urge is like, time to go. And then my whole day I just gotta be like, nah man, stop, I wanna be good. You're basically playing in a moral sandbox. Even when you're not playing as the Dark Urge, you're constantly faced with moral dilemmas, ranging from very serious—
Can we kill them? Please. Pretty please.
—to very silly. At other times, the game focuses primarily on emotional exploration. Now consider the companions, who come with their own personalities, beliefs, and backstories. Your choice of companion is just as much about who you want to hang out with as it is about their practical utility.
A circus! Can we go?
Companions may challenge your perspective, which may in turn change your strategy or your playstyle. The game's use of branching dialogue gives you space to shape your character's personality and values over time. For example, as an argument erupts between Shadowheart and Lae'zel, you can choose to interrupt or stay silent, to humor them, or get aggressive. And your actions have consequences, determining if one of them dies or leaves the party, or whether peace in the group is restored.
It is through conflict that we strengthen our bonds.
The possibilities of play also attracted the interest of biologist Robert W. White, who argues that it serves a biological imperative, otherwise we wouldn't waste energy on it. Play, White says, comes from our desire to test our environment's limit, its capability, and also transformability, as well as the consequences of the changes our actions cause. When you're playing Baldur's Gate, your choices can have meaningful physical results on characters. Consider Will, the monster hunter, whose deal with the devil compels him to do things like kill Karlach, or be painfully transformed into a monster. This presents a difficult moral choice for the player as witness. Through play, we discover inventively and sometimes accidentally ways to grow as a person, potentially making us better at doing our job, settling fights between friends, or just enjoying life. The far-reaching consequences of your actions in Baldur's Gate can be seen as reinforcing your sense of agency and identity. Like when you choose whether to convince Shadowheart not to kill the Night Song, though sometimes the results are just very silly.
You claim victory over the squirrel, though you're not sure why you were fighting to begin with.
Your choices also affect how other characters view you in the game world, with NPCs functioning as moral commentators.
To start over. To be the person you want to be, not what someone else made you to be.
For example, choosing to fully embrace the Dark Urge will cause your companions, Will and Karlach, to leave your party. Both Schiller and White argue that people engage in play to test the limits of their surroundings and discover how things work, ultimately leading to the acquisition of valuable skills and knowledge. When you test the limits of Baldur's Gate gameplay, you're exploring and breaking boundaries without the tangible consequences you might experience in the real world. For example, you can't just walk in your boss's office and say, "I'm the boss now," and he says, "No, you're not." You say, "Yes, I am." Then you take your pants off. You make it uncomfortable because you know he's gonna leave. You put your pants back on. Someone comes in and try to make you leave, but you've stolen his wallet. You pull his ID out. You say that you're him now and he's you. It goes poorly, but in a game you could do something equivalent to that. I love my boss. Your choices can even reshape the entire trajectory of the game, like in the Emperor and Orpheus dilemma. For Schiller, the fact that play, unlike labor, comes with no exploitative motivations, you're not casting Fireball to increase shareholder value, matters. It makes gaming uniquely liberatory. Play harnesses our creative energy and helps us embrace chance and spontaneity, which feels really good. And it might feel weird or even bad that something that leads to personal growth at the individual level is still just a product that's fueling the profits of gaming empires. This might even feel like it undermines everything that we've said so far in this video. It's impossible to ignore the fact that gaming is a $500 billion industry dominated by a few mega corporations. Though it's worth noting that Baldur's Gate is both made and published by Larian, an independent studio. Still, on a practical level, every time we pick up the controller, games are harvesting our data, observing everything from playtime to in-game purchases to subtler player behavior and preferences. That data is used to improve game design, target advertising, develop new monetization strategies, and sell data to third parties. Then there's the matter of playber, the unpaid labor done by players who test beta versions of a game and offer feedback. Now, Baldur's Gate 3 was a result of 3 years of playber via its beta testing and early access. A massive community of players poured hundreds of hours into identifying bugs, suggesting improvements, and analyzing game mechanics. This generated a wealth of data for the designers at Larian, who were able to fix problems and adjust mechanics like class and abilities to create a more balanced game. It also created a force of passionate advocates for the game, who then served as unpaid digital marketers. The enormous economic stakes of the gaming industry has implications beyond playber. Companies exploit the enthusiasm we have for games in so many ways, ranging from microtransactions targeted at kids to additional in-game purchases like the $250 tactical shooter in Unheard Of. We see it in companies releasing games that still have bugs just to turn a short-term profit, or making console-exclusive games that prevent many players from joining in on the fun. Even just the economic practices of the industry compromise gaming's liberatory potential, like when corporations lay off talented employees in spite of record-breaking profits.
Despite the successes, game studios also cut nearly 11,000 jobs.
So what does this mean for all of the personal growth, much less the pure enjoyment that we glean from gaming? Well, honestly, it's kind of complicated, right? Because gaming is both a liberating act of play that helps us grow as moral and social human beings, and it's also the product of an industry that's always trying to profit off the exhilaration we feel when we're taking on the god of death. Both things can be true, and can even cause us the same feeling of moral dilemma we experience when deciding whether or not to save Karlach.
Better let these f***ers know I'm back, and this time, I'm not alone.
As with many pivotal moments in Baldur's Gate 3, life, well, doesn't always have one right answer. But if you think you know the right answer, please do let us know what you think in the comments. Subscribe if you haven't already. A reminder that we have a movie podcast. It's called Show Me the Meaning. We stream right here every Tuesday at 5 p.m. Pacific, and you can check it out whenever you'd like, either here on Spotify or your favorite podcasting app. Thank you so much again for hanging out with us, and I'll see you next time. I'm normally okay with German pronunciation, but I think it's like Spieltrieb, because Trieb is drive. But German's one that's so crazy no one really cares if you got it right, because it's like an insane language. Shout out Germany. Recently, not in general, definitely not in a certain period.